Imagine hearing two tiny heartbeats in a luxury ultrasound suite. Then hours later, seeing your husband on someone else's Instagram, partying across town while you think you're in labor with his twins. That's the first crack in a perfect Manhattan life. And it explodes into offshore money, forged signatures, a wired confession, and an arrest that stops an investor meeting cold. But this isn't just a scandal, it's a war room in a St. Regis suite, a young CEO who thought she was in love, and a father with enough power to pull the truth into daylight. When the wire goes live and the mask finally drops, the question isn't, is he guilty? It's, how far will she go to protect her daughters and rewrite the rules? Stay with me for the next hour to hear how a broken fairy tale becomes a blueprint for survival, and the exact moment the hunter becomes the hunted. If this hooked you, hit like so more people find it. Drop a comment with your wildest prediction. Share it with a friend who loves high-stakes drama, and subscribe so you don't miss the fallout. The ultrasound room at Mount Sinai Hospital's exclusive maternal care wing was designed to feel more like a luxury spa than a medical facility. Soft ambient lighting cast gentle shadows on cream-colored walls, while a hidden sound system played Debussy's Clair de Lune at a volume just loud enough to mask the mechanical hum of medical equipment. For $300 above standard insurance coverage, wealthy Manhattan mothers could pretend their prenatal care was merely another form of pampering, another service in their carefully curated lives of privilege. Sarah Mitchell pressed her manicured hand against her swollen belly as Teresa, the ultrasound technician, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who'd probably seen 1,000 entitled mothers-to-be, moved the transducer across her skin. The cool gel made her shiver despite the room's carefully controlled 72-degree temperature, but nothing could dampen the warmth spreading through her chest as two distinct heartbeats filled the examination room. The sound was rhythmic, hypnotic, like a perfectly synchronized drumbeat that seemed to echo the very rhythm of life itself. "Congratulations, Mrs. Mitchell," Teresa said with a genuine smile that reached her tired eyes, the kind of smile that suggested she still found joy in her work, despite the often difficult clientele. "Both babies look absolutely perfect. Twin A is here on the left, measuring exactly on track at 28 weeks, and Twin B is right there on the right, perhaps a day or two ahead. Would you like to know the genders?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the grainy black and white images on the high-definition monitor. Two babies, two perfect little humans growing inside her. After 3 years of trying multiple rounds of IVF that had cost more than most people's annual salaries, endless hormone injections that left her bloated and emotional, and one devastating miscarriage at 11 weeks that had left her bedridden with grief for a month, she was finally going to be a mother. Not just a mother of twins. "Yes," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion that threatened to overflow into full-blown sobbing. "Yes, I want to know everything about them. Please." "Two beautiful girls," Teresa announced, moving the transducer to get a better angle. "Identical twins, sharing a placenta, but in separate amniotic sacs. That's the best-case scenario for identical twins. They're measuring perfectly for 28 weeks. Good heart rates, plenty of amniotic fluid. These little ladies are thriving." "Ryan, did you hear that?" "Two daughters," Sarah said, reaching for her husband's hand, needing to share this moment of pure joy with the man she'd married 3 years ago in a whirlwind Vegas ceremony that had made headlines in page 6 in the New York Times social section. Ryan Mitchell stood beside the examination table, but his attention was elsewhere, his mind clearly occupying a different universe entirely. His titanium iPhone 14 Pro, the latest model naturally because Ryan always had to have the latest everything, was pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing animatedly as he conducted what was clearly a heated business conversation. At 34, he was what the tech blogs called a wonder kid, a self-made millionaire who'd built Mitchell Innovations from a dorm room startup at MIT into a venture capital powerhouse worth $200 million, at least on paper. He held up one finger towards Sarah, mouthing just a second, with the kind of dismissive gesture you'd use for an interrupting secretary, as he continued his conversation. "Tell the Singapore team we need the merger documents finalized by Friday. I don't care about the time difference or their public holiday schedule. If they want our money, they work on our timeline. That's non-negotiable. Teresa's professional smile faltered slightly, her eyes flicking between Sarah's eager face and Ryan's turned back. She'd probably seen this scene play out 100 times in this room, wealthy husbands too busy conquering the world to notice their wives creating life. The technician busied herself with adjusting the monitor, pretending not to notice the tension that had suddenly filled the room like a noxious gas. "Ryan, please," Sarah said, louder this time, unable to keep the pleading note from her voice. "This is important. This is our daughter's first photo shoot." He finally ended the call with an irritated sigh that suggested Sarah's need for his attention was an inconvenience ranking somewhere between a parking ticket and a delayed flight. He glanced at the screen where their daughters were visible, two perfect profiles facing each other as if already sharing secrets in their warm, aquatic world. "Twins. Great. That's really amazing, honey," he said, leaning down to kiss her forehead quickly, a perfunctory gesture that felt more like checking off a box on his mental to-do list than expressing genuine affection. His phone was already buzzing again, and she could see his fingers twitching with the need to answer it, like an addict needing a fix. "I'll post about it," he said, already typing on his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen with practiced efficiency. Something like, "Blessed to announce we're expecting twin daughters. The Mitchell legacy continues stronger than ever. Hashtag blessed, hashtag twins, hashtag future leaders, hashtag girl dad." How's that sound? Should play well with the male founders in our portfolio. Before Sarah could answer that she'd prefer he actually look at their children rather than craft social media announcements designed to boost his professional image, he was already uploading to Instagram, selecting the perfect filter for the ultrasound image, Valencia to warm up the stark medical blacks and whites, and adding strategic tags that would maximize engagement for power from the venture capital community. Within seconds, the likes started pouring in, hundreds of hearts and congratulations from followers who knew their life only through carefully curated posts, who believed the fiction Ryan created with every upload. "Mr. Mitchell," Teresa said carefully, her voice carrying a subtle note of disapproval she couldn't quite hide, "would you like me to print extra copies of the ultrasound images? Many fathers like to keep one in their wallet or office, to show colleagues, when they're excited about becoming fathers." Ryan barely glanced up from his phone, where he was now responding to comments with practiced charm, using voice-to-text to fire off responses while barely paying attention. "Sure, whatever. Sarah handles all that stuff. Baby books, keepsakes, the sentimental things. I handle the practical side, trust funds, college savings, investment portfolios for their futures. Division of labor. Teresa's lips tightened almost imperceptibly as she printed the images, handing them to Sarah with a sympathetic look that said she'd seen too many women in this position, wealthy, pregnant, and essentially alone. The drive home to their $15 million penthouse on Central Park West was conducted in the usual manner, Ryan taking calls on his AirPods while their driver, Antoine, a discreet Haitian man who'd been driving wealthy New Yorkers for 20 years, navigated the stop-and-go traffic of midday Manhattan. Sarah stared out at the city rushing by, one hand protectively cradling her belly where she could feel the twins moving, their kicks and rolls growing stronger every day, as if they were already fighting for space in their confined world. She watched Ryan in the rearview mirror, noting how animated he became when discussing acquisitions and market projections, how his eyes lit up when talking about potential unicorn investments, how his whole body language changed when he was in his element. When was the last time he looked at her that way? When had she become just another line item in his portfolio, a box to check on his life plan? Wife, acquired, children, in production, family legacy, secured. Next item, global domination. That evening, while Ryan was at another urgent client dinner that would undoubtedly stretch until the early morning hours, Sarah sat alone in the nursery she'd been designing with the help of Celeste Barrington, Manhattan's most sought-after interior decorator, who charged $5,000 just for a consultation. Soft yellow walls had been hand-painted with clouds by an artist flown in from Florence. Two white Italian cribs from Polly that cost more than most cars sat against one wall. The rocking chair that had belonged to her grandmother, the only piece in the room with actual history, actual meaning, sat by the window overlooking the park. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, hundreds of likes and comments on Ryan's announcement post. Everyone envying their perfect life, their perfect marriage, their perfect future. She scrolled through the comments, each one a small dagger twisting in her chest. You two are relationship goals. Those babies are so lucky to have such successful parents. The power couple of Manhattan strikes again. Can't wait to see Finny versions of you both. Your life is literally perfect. If only they knew the truth. The client dinners that always ran until 2 or 3 in the morning, always at restaurants that mysteriously had no receipts the next day. The weekend business trips to evaluate potential investments that never seemed to produce any concrete deals, just vague mentions of promising leads and developing relationships. The way he looked through her now, as if she were translucent, a ghost haunting his perfectly ordered life, visible only when she served a purpose in his grand narrative. Sarah picked up a tiny onesie from Bondpoint, running her fingers over the soft organic cotton that cost more than some people's weekly groceries. These babies would be loved. She would make sure of that, even if their father was too busy conquering the tech world to notice them. Even if they were just props in his carefully staged life, she would love them enough for both parents. Her phone rang, the screen lighting up with her father's contact photo. James Hawthorne, the media mogul whose empire spanned 3 continents and whose net worth Forbes had recently estimated at $42 billion. He called every evening at 8 sharp, a routine established when Sarah was a child that had never wavered, not through hostile takeovers, international expansions, or even her mother's death from pancreatic cancer 5 years ago. "Hi, Dad," Sarah answered, injecting false cheer into her voice, a skill she'd perfected over months of pretending everything was fine, of maintaining the facade that her marriage was as perfect as everyone believed. "How was the appointment?" James's voice was warm, but carried that undertone of authority that made boardrooms fall silent and competitors sweat through their expensive suits. "Teresa takes excellent care of you, I trust. I've donated enough to that hospital to have a wing named after your mother. 2 healthy girls, Dad. Your granddaughters are perfect, both measuring right on track." There was a pause, and Sarah could picture her father in his study, surrounded by first editions and priceless art, his sharp mind already calculating, analyzing, reading between the lines of what she wasn't saying. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. And where is Ryan? I'd like to congratulate him on the continuation of his genetic legacy." Sarah hesitated, her fingers tightening on the phone. "Client dinner. You know how it is. Building an empire requires sacrifice." "I know how it should be," James replied carefully, his tone carrying a weight of disapproval. He was too polite to voice directly, but too concerned to hide entirely. "A man should be with his pregnant wife, especially one carrying twins. When your mother was pregnant with you, I didn't miss a single appointment. I held her hand through every moment of morning sickness, every kick, every sleepless night. I slept on a cot in her hospital room for a week when she was on bed rest. Times were different then, Dad. The business world moves faster now. Values shouldn't change with market conditions," James said firmly. "Sarah, if you need anything—" "I'm fine, Dad, really. Ryan's just busy with the Singapore expansion. Once that's done, he'll have more time. He promised we'd take a baby moon to Turks and Caicos." After she hung up, Sarah went to the master bedroom to change into something more comfortable. The space was a testament to Ryan's taste, all sharp angles and cold minimalism, black and white and chrome, like living inside a high-end boutique hotel that never felt like home. The California king bed with its Italian sheets that cost $3,000 a set, the walk-in closet bigger than most Manhattan studios, the bathroom with its steam shower and Japanese soaking tub that Ryan never used because he showered at the gym. Ryan's suit jacket from the morning was thrown carelessly across their bed, the same bed where they hadn't made love in 4 months, not since her belly had started showing. She remembered his excuse. He was afraid of hurting the babies, even though Dr. Morrison had assured them it was perfectly safe. The truth, she suspected, was that her changing body repulsed him. She was no longer the size 2 trophy wife he could show off at charity galas. As Sarah picked up the jacket to hang it in Ryan's obsessively organized closet, everything arranged by color and designer, shoes and custom-lit displays like a boutique, something fell from the inner pocket. A receipt from Le Bernardin, the 3 Michelin-starred restaurant where they'd celebrated their first anniversary. But this receipt was dated last Tuesday, the same night Ryan had supposedly been in Boston for a fintech conference that couldn't be rescheduled. Sarah stared at the receipt, her heart beginning to race. The total was for 2 dinners, the chef's tasting menu at $400 per person, wine pairings at another $200 each, 2 bottles of wine on top of that, a Chateau d'Yquem in a vintage Burgundy, another $1,500. Dessert to share, the restaurant's famous chocolate souffle that took 45 minutes to prepare, the same one Ryan had ordered for her on their first date when he was still trying to impress her. An intimate meal for 2 that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. While she'd been home alone, feeling the babies perform their nightly gymnastics, wishing desperately that their father was there to feel them move. She folded the receipt carefully and placed it in her jewelry box, beneath the Cartier bracelet Ryan had given her for their anniversary, or rather, had his assistant pick out and wrap. One receipt didn't mean anything. It was probably a client. Ryan entertained clients all the time, wooing investors with expensive meals and carefully calculated charm. The Boston conference could have been rescheduled. There were dozens of innocent explanations. But as she lay in bed that night, alone again in their vast bedroom with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, listening to the distant sounds of the city that never slept, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that her perfect life was built on foundations of sand, and the tide was starting to come in. 3 days after finding the receipt, Sarah discovered Victoria Sterling's earring. It had been a particularly difficult morning. The twins were increasingly active, making her back ache constantly and her bladder feel like a punching bag. She'd thrown up twice, the morning sickness that was supposed to end after the first trimester making an unwelcome return. Ryan had left before dawn for an emergency board meeting. His goodbye, a quick kiss on her forehead that felt more like an afterthought than affection. His cologne, Tom Ford Oud Wood, lingering in the air long after he'd gone. She'd decided to take Ryan's Tesla Model S to her prenatal yoga class in Tribeca since her Range Rover was in the shop for its quarterly maintenance. The Tesla still had that new car smell Ryan loved, mixed with something else. A perfume she didn't recognize. Something young and floral, completely different from her signature Chanel No. 5. The earring was wedged between the passenger seat and center console, a delicate gold piece with a small diamond, the kind of understated elegance that whispered money rather than shouting it. Sarah held it up to the light streaming through the Tesla's panoramic roof, studying it. It definitely wasn't hers. She preferred silver and platinum, had since college when she'd developed an allergic reaction to gold. Every piece of jewelry Ryan had given her since their wedding was white gold or platinum. He should have remembered that. When Ryan came home that evening, earlier than usual, which should have been a red flag, Sarah placed the earring on the pristine marble kitchen counter next to the arrangement of white orchids their housekeeper, Maria, replaced twice weekly. "Someone lost this in your car," she said, keeping her voice neutral, channeling the composure her late mother had taught her, the same composure that had helped her survive Exeter and Harvard. Ryan barely glanced at it. By your name means dad. His attention focused on his phone where the Asian markets were opening. "Oh, that's probably from the investor meeting yesterday. Victoria Sterling, you remember her? She's heading up that AI startup we're considering. Brilliant woman, really revolutionary approach to machine learning. Her team needed a ride to the presentation downtown. Must have fallen out of her ear when she was getting out." The lie came so smoothly that Sarah almost believed it. Almost. But she'd checked his calendar that morning while trying to figure out when they could schedule their next prenatal appointment together. Something that required coordination with his assistant just to get 15 minutes of his time. Yesterday's investor meeting had been a video call. She'd seen the Zoom link still open in his browser history when she'd borrowed his laptop to check their joint account balance. "I thought yesterday's meeting was virtual," Sarah said, her voice carefully controlled, neutral as Switzerland. Ryan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a tell she'd learned to recognize over 3 years of marriage. the same tell he had when bluffing in poker games with his venture capital buddies. The official meeting was, but I met with her team beforehand at the St. Regis to prep. You know how these things go. Sometimes face-to-face is better for feeling out the dynamics, reading the room. He moved toward her, his expression shifting to concern, that practiced look of husbandly worry he could summon on command. Sarah, why are you interrogating me about an earring? You're 7 months pregnant with twins. You should be resting, not playing detective. Is this about the hormones? Dr. Morrison said mood swings and paranoia are common in the third trimester, especially with multiples. Maybe we should adjust your prenatal vitamins. There it was, the redirect. The gentle gaslighting that made her questions seem unreasonable. Her concerns the product of pregnancy-addled thinking rather than legitimate suspicion. Sarah felt the familiar doubt creeping in, insidious as fog. Maybe she was being paranoid. Her body was flooded with hormones, her emotions swinging wildly from joy to tears without warning. Yesterday she'd cried at a commercial for diapers. You're right, she said quietly, hating herself for backing down, for not trusting her instincts. I'm sorry, I miss you. You've been so busy lately. We haven't had dinner together in 2 weeks. Ryan softened immediately, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her belly where the twins were performing their evening gymnastics. I know this is hard. Your body's going through so much. But I'm here, okay? We're in this together. Once the Singapore deal closes next month, I'll take some time off. We'll go to the house in the Hamptons, just the two of us before the twins arrive. Like a baby moon. For a moment, Sarah let herself lean into him, breathing in his familiar cologne, remembering the man who'd proposed to her on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, getting down on one knee while tourists applauded and someone played a violin nearby. Probably paid for by Ryan, she now realized. Another carefully orchestrated moment in his staged life. He'd promised her a life of adventure and love, of building something beautiful together. Where had that man gone? Had he ever existed? Or had she just seen what she wanted to see, projected her dreams onto his ambitious facade? The Pediatric Cancer Foundation Gala was the social event of the fall season, held in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Temple of Denderwing. Every year, New York's elite gathered in black tie to write enormous checks and be seen caring about sick children, to add philanthropists to their social media bios. Sarah had bought her gown months ago, a custom Valentino in midnight blue that had been fitted when she was barely showing. Now, at 7.5 months pregnant with twins, the dress had been let out 3 times and still felt like a silk prison around her expanded middle. You look beautiful, Ryan said absently as they rode in the back of their town car, his attention focused on his phone where he was reviewing quarterly projections. He hadn't actually looked at her when he said it, the compliment as automatic as breathing. Sarah studied her husband in the passing streetlights. His Tom Ford tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his hair expertly styled by the barber who came to his office. His wedding ring, a simple platinum band, catching the light as he typed. To anyone watching, they were the perfect power couple, young, successful, expecting their first children. The American dream wrapped in designer clothing and tied with a bow of prosperity. The gala was in full swing when they arrived, the temple dramatically lit in purple and gold, waiters circulating with champagne and complicated canapes that Sarah couldn't eat due to pregnancy restrictions. Soft cheeses, raw fish, pate, all the things that made these events bearable. She made her way through the crowd, accepting congratulations on the twins, making small talk about nursery decorations and nanny interviews, playing the role of the glowing mother-to-be while her feet screamed in protest inside her Louboutins. Sarah, oh my God, you look amazing. Jennifer Chen approached, air kissing carefully to avoid disturbing either of their makeup. Jennifer's husband ran the second largest hedge fund in the city, and she served on every charity board that mattered. How are you feeling? Twins must be so exhausting. I'm wonderful, Sarah lied smoothly, just excited to meet them. Ryan had immediately disappeared into a cluster of venture capitalists near the bar, his laugh carrying across the room, the practiced laugh he used when someone important told a mediocre joke. Sarah watched him work the room with the same intensity he brought to everything except their marriage. When had she become a prop in his success story rather than his partner? She was standing near the silent auction tables, pretending to study a weekend package to Turks and Caicos that cost more than most annual salaries, when she felt it, a sharp pain in her lower abdomen, followed by a warm sensation spreading down her legs. "Oh God," she gasped, gripping the edge of the table. The room suddenly felt too hot, too bright, the voices around her becoming a distant buzz. Jennifer Chen rushed over. "Sarah, what's wrong? You've gone completely pale." "I think my water just broke," Sarah managed through another wave of pain. "It's too early. The twins, they're only 32 weeks. "Let me get Ryan," Jennifer said, already pulling out her phone. "Where is he?" "By the silent auction, I think. Or maybe the bar. I don't—" Sarah stopped, another contraction stealing her breath. Jennifer was frantically typing on her phone. "I'll call him." "No, I'll text." She stopped mid-sentence, her perfectly made-up face going pale as she stared at her screen. "What?" Sarah asked, though the pain was making it hard to focus on anything beyond the fear that her babies were coming too soon. "It's nothing. Let me try again." But Jennifer's expression had changed, her eyes widening with something that looked like horror mixed with pity. "Jennifer, what is it? Is something wrong with Ryan?" Wordlessly, Jennifer turned her phone around. There, on Victoria Sterling's Instagram story, posted 3 minutes ago, was a video from inside Labo nightclub. The camera panned across the VIP section, the music thumping, bodies moving in the strobing lights. And there, unmistakably, was Ryan. His jacket was off, his shirt partially unbuttoned, his arm around Victoria Sterling's waist as she ground against him. As Sarah watched in frozen horror, Ryan leaned down and kissed Victoria's neck, his hand sliding lower on her hip, possessive and intimate. The timestamp showed it was happening now, this very moment. While Sarah stood at his charity gala, possibly in premature labor with his twins, while 300 of New York's most influential people expected to see them together, Ryan was across town with his 26-year-old mistress. The pain in Sarah's abdomen intensified, but it was nothing compared to the shattering in her chest. The room spun. She gripped Jennifer's arm hard enough to leave marks. "Get me to the hospital," she whispered, "and call my father. Tell him everything." The ride to Mount Sinai was a blur of contractions and tears. Jennifer held her hand in the back of the ambulance while texting furiously with her other hand. Through the haze of pain, Sarah heard fragments of Jennifer's phone calls. "James, it's Jennifer Chen. Sarah's in labor. No, Ryan's not here. You need to see something. I'm sending you a video." At the hospital, the doctors quickly determined it was a false alarm. Braxton Hicks' contractions brought on by severe stress, combined with bladder pressure from the twins. Not actual labor, though Sarah's blood pressure was dangerously high. 160/95, preeclampsia territory. "We're going to keep you overnight for monitoring," Dr. Morrison explained, her kind face creased with concern. "Stress like this isn't good for you or any of the babies. Your blood pressure is concerning. Is there someone we can call? Your husband?" Sarah almost laughed at the bitter irony. "He's busy." "Sarah, this is serious. You need support. The stress could trigger actual premature labor." "My father is coming," Sarah said quietly. "He'll be here soon." Ryan arrived at the hospital at 1 in the morning, reeking of perfume, something young and floral, Victoria's signature scent, she now realized, and vodka. His shirt was hastily rebuttoned with one button off, his hair mussed in a way that had nothing to do with the wind, lipstick barely visible on his collar in the harsh hospital lighting. "Baby, I'm so sorry," he said, rushing to her bedside with practiced concern. "I got Jennifer's message and came as soon as I could. The traffic was insane. There was an accident on the FDR. 3-car pileup. Took me forever to get here." Sarah looked at him from her hospital bed, really looked at him. This stranger wearing her husband's face, this man who could lie as easily as breathing. When had she stopped recognizing the man she'd married? Or had she never really known him at all? "I saw the video, Ryan." The color drained from his face so quickly she could actually see it happen, like watching water drain from a tub. His mask slipped on for just a moment, and she saw the calculations happening behind his eyes. Denial, deflection, damage control. "What video?" "Victoria's Instagram. You were with her, tonight, while I thought I was in labor with your children. You were at Lavo with your tongue down her throat. For a moment, Ryan's mask slipped completely. She saw calculation in his eyes, measuring his options, analyzing the situation like it was a hostile takeover rather than the destruction of their marriage. Then, like watching an actor step into character, he became the wounded husband. Sarah, you're confused. The medication they gave you, Dr. Morrison said they gave you something for the pain. They gave me nothing but IV fluids. Sarah cut him off, her voice sharp as broken glass. Stop lying to me, Ryan. For once in your life, just stop lying. His phone buzzed. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. The audacity of it, his mistress texting him while he stood at his pregnant wife's hospital bed, finally broke something inside Sarah. Not her heart. That had been breaking for months. Her tolerance, her patience, her willingness to pretend. Get out, she said quietly. Sarah, please, we need to talk about this. Get out, her voice echoed through the room, causing a nurse to peek in with concern. And don't come back until you're ready to tell me the truth about everything. About Victoria, about the money you've been stealing, about all of it. Ryan's face went from pale to ashen. What money? What are you talking about? I know about the $3 million, Ryan. I know about the offshore accounts. I know everything. She didn't, not yet, but his expression told her she'd hit close enough to the truth. He backed toward the door, his usual confidence completely shattered. This isn't over, he said quietly. You're right, Sarah agreed. It's just beginning. James Hawthorne's Gulfstream G650 touched down at Teterboro Airport at 11 p.m., and by midnight, Sarah was installed in the presidential suite at the St. Regis, her father's security team stationed discreetly in the hallway. The suite was larger than most Manhattan apartments, with 3 bedrooms, a full dining room, and views of Central Park that stretched to the horizon. James sat across from his daughter in the suite's living room, his face carved from granite. At 58, he remained an imposing figure, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with the bearing of a man who'd built a media empire from a single newspaper in Buffalo to a conglomerate worth $42 billion. He'd listened to Sarah's story without interrupting, his only movement the rhythmic clenching of his jaw. Show me everything, he said finally. Sarah opened her laptop, pulling up the files she'd been secretly compiling for weeks, ever since she'd found that first receipt. Bank statements showing unusual transfers, credit card records documenting expensive purchases she'd never seen, screenshots of Victoria's social media going back months, showing her at events where Ryan was supposedly alone. The pattern was clear. The affair had been going on for at least 4 months, possibly longer. I hired someone, Sarah admitted, a forensic accountant, paid cash from my trust fund so Ryan wouldn't know. James's eyebrows rose slightly, perhaps the first sign of surprise he'd shown. Good. What did they find? $3 million moved through various accounts over the past 6 months, all of it ending up offshore in the Caymans. He's been using Victoria's startup as a shell company to launder it. Does she know? I don't think so. She's 26, ambitious, thinks she's building the next big thing in AI. She has no idea Ryan's using her company to hide embezzled funds. James stood, moving to the window overlooking the park. The city sparkled below them, millions of lights representing millions of lives, millions of dreams and ambitions. Ryan mentioned Senator Morrison and Blake. Something about payments in '98. He says he has recordings. Sarah watched her father carefully. Is it true? Did you bribe them? James turned back to his daughter, and for the first time she saw him not as her father, but as the shark everyone else saw, the man who'd destroyed companies and careers without blinking. In 1998, I was expanding internationally. Morrison and Blake were on the FCC committee that needed to approve our broadcast licenses. I made completely legal campaign contributions to both of their PACs, all properly documented and reported. But I also had private conversations with them about the importance of media diversity, about how my expansion would create jobs, increase competition. And Ryan has recordings of these conversations. He might have something. There was a young aide, Peter Garrison, who was always lurking around with one of those early digital recorders, the kind that looked like a pen. He died in 2003, drug overdose. His estate was a mess, sold off to pay debts. If Ryan went digging, He might have bought something from whoever ended up with Garrison's belongings. Could the recordings hurt you? James sat back down, his expression thoughtful. The recordings, taken out of context, could be made to sound questionable. A discussion about campaign contributions followed by talk of favorable legislation. But Morrison retired 8 years ago after a gambling scandal I helped expose, though that's not public knowledge. Blake died in 2015, and his widow, Margaret, is one of my closest friends. I paid for his cancer treatment when his insurance wouldn't cover experimental therapies. Any attempt to use those recordings would result in both of them, or Margaret, explaining the full context. Ryan thinks he has a nuclear weapon. What he has is a wet firecracker. So we fight back? We don't fight, sweetheart. We destroy, completely and utterly, so that no one ever thinks about threatening you again. Over the next 3 days, James assembled what Sarah privately thought of as a war council. The suite became a command center with laptops, printers, and secure phone lines installed by her father's technical team. The St. Regis staff, well-trained in discretion and even better paid for their silence, acted as if nothing unusual was happening. First came Eleanor Walsh, New York's most feared divorce attorney. At 62, Eleanor looked like someone's grandmother. Soft gray hair, kind eyes, cardigans with cat brooches. The appearance was carefully cultivated camouflage for a woman who'd once left a billionaire's ex-husband living in a studio apartment in Queens, grateful to keep his name. The prenup is Swiss cheese, Eleanor announced after reviewing it for an hour, making notes on her iPad with the stylus. Ryan was clever, but not clever enough. See this clause about financial harm? He's been using marital assets, the joint accounts, to fund his affair. That's financial harm. Moreover, if we can prove he's committed financial crimes, the entire prenup becomes void under New York law. No judge will enforce a contract that enables criminal activity. Can we prove financial crimes? Sarah asked. That's where I come in, said the next arrival. Marcus Cole entered the suite looking like he hadn't slept in days. Ryan's business partner and former MIT roommate Marcus was 45, prematurely gray, with the soft look of someone who's spent too much time behind computers and not enough in the gym. He carried a metal briefcase that looked like something from a spy movie. I can't do this anymore, Marcus said without preamble, setting the briefcase on the dining table. I've watched Ryan destroy everything good in his life for years, but this? He gestured at Sarah's pregnant belly. This is too far. What are you offering? James asked bluntly, his tone suggesting he'd heard many such offers of betrayal over the years. Marcus opened the briefcase, revealing several hard drives and a stack of printed documents. Everything. Emails going back 5 years. Recorded conversations. New York is a one-party consent state, perfectly legal. Financial records showing every transaction, every hidden account, every penny he's stolen. Ryan's been cooking the books since day one. I have proof he's embezzled $3 million from the company. I have recordings of him discussing how to hide assets offshore. I have everything you need to bury him. Why? Sarah asked. Why betray your business partner? You'll lose everything too if the company goes down. Marcus looked at her with an expression of such longing that Sarah felt her cheeks flush. I've been in love with you since we met at Ryan's birthday party 4 years ago. I stood by and watched him treat you like an accessory while you tried so hard to make him happy. I watched him chip away at your confidence, gaslight you, make you doubt yourself. I should have said something sooner. Marcus, Sarah said gently, this can't be about feelings, sensations. It's not, Marcus said firmly, though his eyes said otherwise. It's about what's right. Ryan's going to destroy the company anyway with his reckless spending. At least this way, you and your children get justice. And maybe, he trailed off, then straightened. The company has a poison pill clause. If Ryan is removed for cause, which includes criminal activity, his shares revert to the remaining partners. I'll own everything, and I'll make sure you and the twins are taken care of. The final member of the War Council arrived that evening. Detective Diane Cooper, a financial crimes investigator with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. She was a small black woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, known for taking down white-collar criminals who thought they were untouchable. We've been building a case against Mitchell Innovations for 6 months, Detective Cooper explained, spreading documents across the dining table. We suspected Ryan was using investor funds for personal expenses, but we couldn't prove he knew about it. We thought his CFO was doing it without Ryan's knowledge. But now, James prompted, now with Mr. Cole's cooperation and the evidence Mrs. Mitchell has gathered, we have him dead to rights. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit money laundering. We're talking 15 to 20 years federal time. What about Victoria Sterling? Sir asked. She doesn't know Ryan's using her company to launder money. Detective Cooper's expression softened slightly. Miss Sterling is what we call a useful idiot. She signed everything Ryan put in front of her without questioning it. Technically, she's guilty of money laundering, but if she cooperates, she'll cooperate, Sarah said with certainty. She just doesn't know she needs to yet. What makes you so sure? Eleanor asked. Sarah pulled up her phone, showing them Victoria's latest Instagram post, a photo from a pharmacy, holding a pregnancy test with a caption, "When you know, had blessed our startup life, hash baby-making moves." She's pregnant, Sarah said quietly, with Ryan's baby. Posted it an hour ago. Ryan doesn't know yet. He doesn't follow her personal account, only her business one. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Jesus, Marcus muttered. He's got you 7 months pregnant with twins and her pregnant too? This changes things, Eleanor said, already calculating. Reproductive coercion, abandonment, potential bigamy if he promised to marry her. He did, Marcus said quietly. I heard him on the phone with her last week. Told her as soon as his situation was resolved, they'd get married in Turks and Caicos. James stood up, his face a mask of cold fury. How long until you can arrest him? Detective Cooper checked her phone. With what we have now, I can have a warrant by Monday morning, but if we could get one more piece of evidence, something that shows clear intent. Sarah, James said, turning to his daughter, can you get Victoria to meet with you? Sarah thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I think I can. Sarah's text to Victoria was simple. We need to talk about Ryan, St. Regis Hotel, Suite 2012. Come alone. Victoria arrived an hour later dressed in designer athletic wear that probably cost more than most people's rent, her hand unconsciously resting on her still flat stomach. Up close, Sarah could see what Ryan had been attracted to. Victoria was stunning in that sharp, hungry way of someone who'd clawed their way up from nothing. She had the kind of beauty that photographed well on Instagram, all angles and attitude. Is this where you tell me to stay away from your mom? Victoria asked, chin raised defiantly as she entered the suite. Because I should tell you, he's already made his choice. Sarah studied the younger woman carefully. How far along are you? Victoria's hand moved protectively to her stomach. 8 weeks. Ryan doesn't know yet. I was going to tell him tonight. Don't. Excuse me? Sarah gestured to the couch. Sit down, Victoria. What I'm about to show you might save you from federal prison. That got her attention. Victoria sat, her defiance wavering. Sarah opened her laptop, pulling up the forensic accountant's report. Ryan has been using your company to launder money, $3 million over the past 6 months. Your signature is on every transfer. That's impossible. Those were investment funds that were immediately transferred to offshore accounts in the Caymans. Look, Sarah showed her the trail, each transaction clearly documented. Did you know about any of this? Victoria's face had gone pale. No, he said it was standard practice for tax purposes. He said all startups did it. All startups don't commit federal wire fraud, Eleanor Walsh said, entering from the bedroom where she'd been waiting. Miss Sterling, I'm Eleanor Walsh, attorney. You're looking at 10 to 15 years for money laundering. But I didn't know. Your signature says otherwise, unless, Eleanor paused dramatically, unless you cooperate with the investigation. What investigation? Detective Cooper entered next, showing her badge, the one that's been ongoing for 6 months. We're arresting Ryan Monday morning. The question is whether you're going down with him or helping us take him down. Victoria looked between the 3 women, her hand still on her stomach. I'm pregnant. I can't go to prison. I can't. Then help us, Sarah said gently. He's using you, Victoria, just like he used me. He loves me. He said once the divorce was final. He said the same things to me 4 years ago, and probably to the woman before me. Sarah pulled up another document on her laptop. Did you know he's already been married twice before me? Both marriages ended when the women got pregnant. Both times he hid assets, destroyed their reputations, and left them with nothing. Victoria was crying now, her careful makeup running. I thought I was special. I thought we were building something together. You were building something, Marcus said, entering the conversation. A prison sentence. Ryan doesn't care about anyone but Ryan. What do you want me to do? Victoria asked quietly. Wear a wire, Detective Cooper said. Get him to admit he used your company without your knowledge. Get him to talk about the money. He'll never admit that. He will if you tell him the FBI contacted you, Sarah said. Tell him they're asking questions about the transfers. See what he says. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I'll do it. But I want immunity, full immunity, and I want it in writing. Done, Detective Cooper said. We'll have the paperwork drawn up within the hour. As Victoria was getting wired up in the bedroom with Detective Cooper, she turned to Sarah. Why are you helping me? I slept with your husband. I'm carrying his child. Sarah looked at this young woman, pregnant and terrified, and saw herself 4 years ago, naive, in love, believing every lie because the truth was too painful to accept. Because we're both victims of the same man, Sarah said simply, and because your child doesn't deserve to pay for their father's crimes. Neither do mine. The meeting between Victoria and Ryan was set for the next evening at a boutique hotel bar in Tribeca. Sarah waited in a surveillance van with Detective Cooper and her team, listening through headphones as Victoria walked in. The wire was state-of-the-art, practically invisible, transmitting every word with crystal clarity. You look tired, Victoria's voice came through. Vic, what are you doing here? Ryan sounded exhausted, paranoid. We agreed no contact until things calmed down. The FBI called me, Ryan. They want to talk about my company's finances. What did you do? There was the sound of a chair scraping, Ryan moving closer. Keep your voice down. Listen, it's nothing, some routine questions. Just tell them you don't know anything. But I signed those papers. My name is on everything. You signed what I told you to sign, Ryan said quietly, because you trusted me, because you're smart enough to know that sometimes to build something great, you have to operate in gray areas. Gray areas, Ryan, they're talking about money laundering. It's not, Ryan caught himself. Look, I moved some funds through your company, yes, but it was just temporary, just until the new funding came through. How much? Does it matter? How much, Ryan? A sigh. 3 million, give or take. In the van, Detective Cooper smiled grimly. Got him. But Victoria wasn't done. And you didn't think to tell me? I'm carrying your child, Ryan. About that, Ryan's voice turned cold. The timing really is terrible, Vic. Maybe we should consider alternatives. Alternatives? You mean abortion? I mean being practical. I'm about to be in a custody battle for twins. I can't handle another baby right now. Sarah felt sick listening to it. Even knowing who Ryan was, hearing him dismiss his own children so casually was devastating. You said you loved me, Victoria said, and Sarah could hear tears in her voice. I do, baby, but love doesn't mean being stupid. Look, take care of the FBI thing, take care of the other thing, and when this all blows over, we'll be together, I promise. What if I don't want to take care of the other thing? Then you're on your own. I can't protect you if you're not willing to be smart about this. You'll go to prison, Victoria. Is that what you want? To give birth in federal custody? You're threatening me? I'm being realistic. You think Sarah's father won't destroy you too? You're collateral damage, Vic. Unless you play this smart. Like you played me? There was a pause. Then Ryan's voice, harder now. I made you. Your company was nothing before I invested. You were nothing. A nobody from Queens with a good idea and a great body. I gave you everything. You used me. We used each other. That's how the world works. Now, are you going to be smart about this, or do I need to protect myself? What does that mean? It means I have documents that show you knew about everything. Emails where you approved the transfers. Your signature on documents explicitly mentioning offshore accounts. Those are fake. Prove it. Your signature is your signature. Digital forensics can be interpreted many ways. Detective Cooper pulled off her headphones. That's enough. We're going in. Wait, Sarah said. Let Victoria get clear first. Through the wire, they heard Victoria stand up. I need to think about this. Don't think too long, Ryan said. The FBI won't wait, and neither will I. Victoria left the bar, walking quickly to the van. As soon as she was inside, she broke down sobbing. He never loved me. He never loved anyone. No, Sarah agreed, putting an arm around the younger woman. He didn't. The arrest happened at Mitchell Innovations' quarterly investor meeting, scheduled for Monday morning at the Four Seasons. Ryan was midway through a presentation about projected growth, standing before a PowerPoint that promised 30% returns when Detective Cooper walked in with 4 FBI agents. The room was packed with investors, board members, and several conveniently alerted members of the press. James Hawthorne had made sure of that. Ryan Mitchell, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The room erupted. Investors scrambled away from Ryan as if his crimes might be contagious. Photographers, tipped off by someone, captured every moment as Ryan was handcuffed, his face a mask of shock and rage. This is a mistake, he shouted as they led him away. This is James Hawthorne's doing. He's setting me up. Check his history. Check the senators. But no one was listening. The mighty Ryan Mitchell, tech wonder kid, was being perp-walked out of his own investor meeting, his empire crumbling in real time. Sarah watched it on the news from her hospital bed. She'd gone into labor that morning. Real labor this time. Not false alarms. 3 weeks early, but not dangerously so. The stress of the past week had finally triggered what her body had been preparing for. You need to focus on breathing, the nurse said gently. Your babies need you calm. But how could she be calm when her life was exploding on every news channel? The arrest was the top story, with split screens showing Ryan being led away and old photos of their wedding, their perfect life that had never been perfect at all. James burst into the delivery room just as Sarah was entering transition. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. Dad, it hurts. I know, but you're stronger than you know. You're a Hawthorne. These babies are Hawthorns. We don't break. Did you see? The arrest? I saw. It's done. He can't hurt you anymore. 8 hours later, Sarah held 2 perfect, tiny daughters. Emily Claire, 5 pounds 2 ounces, with a shock of dark hair like her mother. Hannah Rose, 4 pounds 15 ounces, smaller but fiercer, her cries filling the room with determined life. They're beautiful, James said, tears streaming down his face. The first time Sarah had seen him cry since her mother's funeral. Your mother would have been so proud. Sarah looked at her daughters, feeling a love so fierce it took her breath away. These babies would never doubt they were wanted, never question their worth, never be treated as inconveniences or complications. Marcus arrived the next day with flowers and an update. Ryan's been denied bail. The judge considered him a flight risk given the offshore accounts. His assets are frozen. The company's being liquidated. What about Victoria? Full immunity in exchange for her testimony. She's also agreed to testify about Ryan suggesting she terminate her pregnancy. Turns out that's considered reproductive coercion, and it's strengthening the case for you getting full custody. Sarah adjusted Emily in her arms while Hannah slept in the bassinet beside the bed. I don't want to keep him from them entirely. Every child deserves to know their father, even if he's a complete sociopath, Marcus suggested. I was going to say flawed. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb the babies. Sarah, I need to tell you something. I know the timing is terrible, but I might not get another chance. Marcus, I've loved you since junior year of college. I watched you marry Ryan even though I knew he'd never deserve you. I stood by while he destroyed everything good in your life. I can't do it anymore. I know you need time to heal, to focus on your daughters. But someday when you're ready, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real dinner, where no one's wearing a wire and no one's committing fraud. Sarah looked at this man who'd risked everything to help her, who'd been there when she needed him most. Ask me in a year. Is that a maybe? It's a ask me in a year. I need to figure out who I am without Ryan, who I am as a mother. But Marcus? She reached out and squeezed his hand. Thank you for everything. The trial was swift and brutal. With Victoria's testimony, Marcus's evidence, and the FBI's financial records, Ryan's lawyers had little to work with. They tried to paint him as a visionary brought down by jealous competitors, but the evidence was overwhelming. Victoria took the stand on day 3, wearing a conservative suit that couldn't quite hide her growing baby bump. She was 4 months pregnant now, starting to show. He told me he loved me, she testified, her voice steady despite the tears. He said we were building a future together. But I was just another asset to him, another tool to use and discard. Objection, Ryan's lawyer called out. Emotional speculation. Sustained, the judge said. Please stick to facts, Miss Sterling. The facts are that Ryan Mitchell used my company to launder $3 million without my knowledge. He threatened me when I questioned him. He told me to terminate my pregnancy or face prison. Those are facts. Ryan sat at the defense table, his face a mask of cold fury. He'd lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. The orange jumpsuit he'd worn for his arraignment had been replaced, but everyone remembered the photos the golden boy brought low. Marcus testified next, bringing with him recordings that painted a damning picture of Ryan's criminal enterprise. Play recording 17, the prosecutor instructed. Ryan's voice filled the courtroom. The beauty of using Victoria's company is that she's too naive to ask questions. She thinks she's changing the world with the AI. She has no idea she's just a pipeline for moving money. If things go south, she takes the fall. Young, ambitious woman gets in over her head, tale as old as time. Several jurors shook their heads in disgust. Sarah didn't testify. Eleanor had advised against it. Let the evidence speak for itself. But she attended every time, sitting in the gallery with her father, bearing witness to the complete destruction of the man who had nearly destroyed her. On the final day of testimony, Ryan took the stand against his lawyer's advice. He couldn't help himself. The narcissist's need to control the narrative, overwhelming legal strategy. I built something extraordinary, he said, addressing the jury directly. Mitchell Innovations was revolutionary. Yes, I cut corners. Yes, I moved money in ways that weren't strictly legal. But that's how innovation happens. That's how you change the world. By stealing from investors, the prosecutor asked. By doing what was necessary. By abandoning your pregnant wife? My personal life has nothing to do with this. Doesn't it? You used your wife's trust fund as collateral for loans you never disclosed to her. You used your mistress's company to hide stolen funds. Your personal life is the crime, Mr. Mitchell. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. 15 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole in 8. Sarah was granted full custody of the twins, with Ryan allowed supervised visitation once a month if he chose to exercise it. He didn't. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the office of the newly established Hawthorne Mitchell Foundation for Women's Financial Literacy. The twins were taking their first wobbling steps, chasing each other around the soft play area she'd had installed in the corner, their laughter filling the space with pure joy. Mama, Emily called, holding up a block triumphantly. Good job, sweetheart, Sarah said, scooping her up while Hannah attached herself to her leg, demanding attention. The foundation had been her father's idea initially, but Sarah had shaped it into something uniquely hers. They provided free financial education to women, especially those escaping abusive relationships. They helped women understand prenups, recognize financial abuse, protect their assets. In 6 months, they'd helped over 300 women avoid the traps Sarah had almost been caught in. Victoria Sterling walked in carrying her 6-month-old son, James. She'd named him after Sarah's father, who'd paid for her legal defense and helped her rebuild her company legitimately. The gesture had surprised everyone, but Victoria had been genuinely grateful for the second chance. The Times wants to do a profile, Victoria said, bouncing her son on her hip. 2 women who brought down a corrupt CEO, now working together. Former wife and former mistress, united against financial abuse. It's a good story. Sarah and Victoria's relationship would never be friendship exactly, but it had evolved into something like mutual respect. They'd both been victims of the same man, both been saved by their choice to fight back together. What do you think? Victoria asked. I think we tell them yes, but we control the narrative. This isn't about Ryan. It's about what we built from the ashes. Marcus appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. He and Sarah had been dating for 3 months now, taking things slowly, building something real on a foundation of trust and genuine affection. He'd taken over Mitchell Innovations, renamed it Cole Technologies, and turned it into a legitimate success. The investors who'd stuck around after Ryan's arrest had seen their portfolios triple. The prosecutor called, he said. Ryan's appeal was denied. Sarah felt nothing, no satisfaction, no regret. Ryan had become irrelevant to her life, a cautionary tale she'd tell her daughters someday about the importance of knowing your worth. Oh, and this came for you, Marcus added, handing her an envelope. Sarah recognized Ryan's handwriting immediately. From federal prison, he was still trying to have the last word. She stared at the letter for a long moment, then walked to the shredder and fed it through unopened. Whatever Ryan had to say, she didn't need to hear it. Mama, up, Hannah demanded, and Sarah obliged, holding both twins now, their weight familiar and comforting in her arms. So, Victoria said, adjusting James Jr. on her hip, ready to change the world? Sarah looked around the office, at her daughters, at Marcus, at Victoria and baby James, at the photos on the wall of the women they had already helped. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. We already are, she said. 5 years had passed since Ryan Mitchell's arrest. Sarah stood before a packed auditorium at Columbia Business School, delivering the keynote address for their Women in Finance Symposium. The space was filled to capacity, with overflow rooms streaming the talk to hundreds more. People often ask me, she said, looking out at the sea of young faces, how I survived the very public collapse of my marriage while 8 months pregnant with twins. They expect me to talk about strength or resilience or female empowerment. But the truth is simpler and more complex than that. She clicked to the next slide, showing a photo of Emily and Hannah on their first day of kindergarten, beaming at the camera in their matching uniforms from the Brearley School. I survived because I had no choice. My daughters needed me to survive. They needed me to show them that their worth wasn't determined by their father's absence or his crimes. They needed me to demonstrate that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is ask for help. In the audience, she spotted several familiar faces. Detective Diane Cooper, now chief of the Financial Crimes Division. Eleanor Walsh, who'd become not just her lawyer, but a trusted friend and godmother to the twins. Marcus, her husband of 2 years, sitting in the front row with that soft smile that still made her heart skip. And in the back, trying to be discreet despite his imposing presence, her father James, proud tears visible even from the stage. My ex-husband is eligible for parole next year, Sarah continued. My daughters have never met him. They know he exists, they know he made bad choices, but they also know they are loved completely by the family they do have. They have a grandfather who reads them bedtime stories every night over video chat when he's traveling. They have Marcus, she smiled at her husband, who taught them to ride bikes and never once made them feel like they weren't his biological daughters. They have a village. She clicked to the next slide. Statistics about financial abuse in marriages. 1 in 4 women will experience financial abuse by an intimate partner. They'll have their credit destroyed, their assets hidden, their economic freedom stripped away. Many stay because they believe they have no options. I'm here to tell you there are always options, but sometimes you need help seeing them. A hand raised in the audience. Mrs. Cole, what about Victoria Sterling? You worked with the woman who had an affair with your husband? Sarah smiled. Victoria Sterling is now one of my closest allies. She runs a legitimate AI company that just received Series B funding of $50 million. She's also a single mother who volunteers with our foundation, teaching other women how to recognize when they're being used as financial pawns. Victoria was a victim too, just a different kind. When women support each other instead of tearing each other down, extraordinary things happen. The Hawthorne Mitchell Foundation has helped over 3,000 women in the past 5 years gain financial independence. We've provided legal services, financial education, and emergency funding. But more importantly, we've provided hope. She paused, remembering that night in the hospital when she'd first held her daughters, terrified and alone despite being surrounded by people. I want to leave you with this. Your worth is not determined by who loves you or who leaves you. It's not measured in dollars or status or the ring on your finger. Your worth is inherent, unshakable, and entirely your own. No one can take that from you unless you let them. And if you're in a situation where someone is trying to diminish your worth, financial or otherwise, please know that you're not alone. There are resources, there are people who want to help, and there is always, always a way forward, even when you can't see it. The applause was thunderous. Sarah stepped back from the podium, feeling the weight of the journey that had brought her here. As she walked off stage, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Twins want to know if inspiring speakers get ice cream after. They voted yes, so did I. She laughed, typing back, "Tell them yes, extra sprinkles for everyone." Later that evening, after the twins were asleep in their beds, not a penthouse anymore, but a warm brownstone in Brooklyn that felt like a real home, Sarah sat in her study reviewing foundation applications. The room was cozy, filled with children's artwork and family photos, so different from the cold minimalism of her former life. Marcus knocked gently. "Letter came," he said, "from Rikers." Sarah looked at the envelope. Ryan's handwriting had gotten smaller, more cramped over the years. "You don't have to read it," Marcus said. "I know." Sarah turned the envelope over in her hands. "But I think I need to, for closure." Marcus kissed her forehead. "I'll be in the living room if you need me." Sarah opened the letter. "Sarah, I know I have no right to write to you. I've started this letter 100 times over the past 5 years. I want to say I'm sorry, but I know that word means nothing coming from me. I want to say I've changed, but who would believe that? The truth is, I don't know who I am anymore. The man who did those things to you feels like a stranger, but I know it was me. I made those choices. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was too arrogant to see what actually mattered. I dream about them sometimes. The twins, I imagine what they look like, what their voices sound like, whether they have your smile or my eyes. I know I have no right to those dreams. I heard about your foundation, about the women you have helped. I heard you married Marcus. He always loved you better than I did. I heard Victoria had her baby, that she named him after your father. The irony isn't lost on me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away. You weren't a stepping stone or a business deal. You were my wife carrying my children, and I failed you in every way possible. There's something else, something I've never told anyone. My father, he was like me. Worse, actually. He destroyed my mother with his affairs, his financial manipulation, his emotional abuse. I watched her shrink until she disappeared entirely. She died when I was 15, officially of cancer, but really of a broken spirit. I swore I'd never be like him. Instead, I became him exactly. Maybe that's what we do, become the monsters we fear most. I hope you found happiness. I hope the girls have a father figure who deserves them. I hope you've built the life you always wanted, the real one, not the performance we were living. Don't write back. This isn't the beginning of anything. It's just something I needed to say, even if you never read it. Ryan, P.S., there's something you should know. Your father didn't bribe those senators. I made that up, hired actors to create fake recordings. I was desperate, and I thought I could bluff my way out. Just another line in a life full of them. Sarah read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. She felt something, not forgiveness, that would never come. Not pity exactly, maybe understanding. Ryan was a broken person who broke others, a generational curse he had failed to break. She closed the drawer and walked to the living room where Marcus was reading, his glasses perched on his nose. He looked up as she entered. "You okay?" "Yeah," Sarah said, and meant it. "I really am." She curled up beside him on the couch, feeling the solid warmth of him, the quiet strength that never demanded anything but offered everything. "The twins have a play date tomorrow with Victoria's son," she said. "Can you do pickup?" "Of course. Pizza after?" "They'll revolt if we don't." Marcus laughed, pulling her closer. "Remember when your biggest worry was which preschool to choose?" Feels like a lifetime ago. It was. You're not the same person who found that earring in Ryan's car. Sarah thought about that woman, pregnant, trusting, desperate to save a marriage that had never been real. She felt compassion for her, but no desire to be her again. No, she agreed, I'm not. Outside, New York hummed with its eternal energy. Inside, Sarah Cole, she'd legally changed her name after the divorce, taking Marcus's name when they married, but keeping her professional identity as Sarah Hawthorne, sat with the man who'd shown her what real love looked like. Tomorrow, she'd wake up to two 5-year-olds jumping on her bed, demanding pancakes shaped like butterflies. She'd review more foundation applications, help more women escape their own Ryan Mitchells. She'd have lunch with Victoria, their monthly tradition where they discuss business and occasionally laugh about the absurdity of their friendship. She'd pick up the twins from school, listening to their elaborate stories about playground politics. She'd have dinner with her father, who came over every Sunday without fail. The fairy tale she'd thought she wanted, the millionaire husband, the perfect penthouse, the curated life, had been a prison with golden bars. This messy, complicated real life was freedom. Her phone lit up with a text from her father. Proud of you today. Your mother would be too. Give my granddaughters a kiss from Pop Pop. P.S. Emily asked if I could teach her about hostile takeovers. Should I be concerned? Sarah smiled, typing back, very concerned. She's already taken over the playground. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The Hawthorne Foundation's 10th anniversary gala was held at the Museum of Modern Art, a full-circle moment that wasn't lost on Sarah. She stood at the podium, looking out at a room filled with hundreds of supporters, survivors, and success stories. 10 years ago, she began, I stood in a museum much like this one, thinking my water had broken, discovering my husband was cheating on me, and watching my entire world collapse. It was the worst night of my life. It was also the beginning of everything. Emily and Hannah, now 15, sat at the front table, poised and confident in the way of teenagers who'd been raised to know their worth. They'd grown into remarkable young women, Emily with her grandfather's business acumen and her mother's empathy, Hannah with Marcus's gentle nature and a fierce protective streak for the underdog. Mom's getting emotional, Hannah whispered to Emily, loud enough for the front rows to hear. I heard that, Sarah said, and the room laughed. Yes, I'm emotional, because tonight we're announcing that the Hawthorne Foundation has helped its 10,000th woman escape financial abuse. The room erupted in applause. But more than that, we're announcing our expansion. The Sterling Initiative, funded by a generous donation from Victoria Sterling's company, will provide seed funding for businesses started by survivors of financial abuse. Victoria stood, now a successful CEO in her own right, her son James Jr. applauding beside her, a handsome 10-year-old who called Sarah Aunt Sarah and spent summers with the twins in the Hamptons. None of this would have been possible without all of you, Sarah continued. Every donation, every volunteer hour, every woman who was brave enough to ask for help and then turned around to help others. You've turned pain into power, trauma into triumph. Marcus caught her eye from his table, giving her the subtle thumbs up that had become their private signal over the years. Beside him, James Hawthorne, now nearing 70 but still formidable, wiped away what he would later insist was just dust in his eye. I want to close with a story, Sarah said. Last week I received a letter. The writer said she'd been married to a man who controlled every penny, who convinced her she was worthless, who nearly destroyed her. She said our foundation helped her escape, rebuild, and start her own company. She's now employing 15 other survivors. She wanted me to know that the ripple effects of what we do here extend far beyond what we can see. Sarah paused, looking at her daughters, at Marcus, at her father, at Victoria, at all the faces of women who'd refused to be broken. That's what happens when women support women. That's what happens when we refuse to let our worst moments define us. That's what happens when we turn our pain into purpose. My ex-husband gets out of prison next month, Sarah said, and the room went quiet. He served 10 years of a 15-year sentence. My daughters have decided they don't want to meet him. That's their choice, and I support it. But I want him to know something, and I want all of you to know it too. I forgive him. Gasps rippled through the room. Not for him, Sarah clarified. For me, for my daughters, for all of us, Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean there aren't consequences. It means I refuse to carry the weight of his choices anymore. I refuse to let bitterness poison the beautiful life we've built. She raised her champagne glass. So here's to the next 10 years. To the women we'll help. To the daughters we're raising to never accept less than they deserve. To the men like my husband and my father who show us every day what real partnership looks like. And yes, even to the man who nearly destroyed me, because his failure taught me what real success looks like. The room erupted in applause that seemed to go on forever. After the gala, Sarah found herself on the museum's rooftop garden, the Manhattan skyline glittering around her. Emily and Hannah had commandeered the dessert table downstairs. Marcus was deep in conversation with potential donors, and her father was holding court with a group of journalists, ensuring the foundation's story would be front-page news tomorrow. Victoria joined her, both women comfortable in the silence that had replaced their initial animosity. "Did you mean it?" Victoria asked finally. "About forgiving him?" "Yes and no," Sarah admitted. "I meant what I said. I refuse to carry his poison. But forgiveness isn't absolution. He made his choices. We're living with the consequences, but we're thriving despite them." "James Jr. asked about his father the other day," Victoria said quietly. "Really asked, not just the surface questions. He wanted to know if his dad was a bad person." "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That his father was a broken person who broke others. That sometimes people can't love properly because they never learned how. That it wasn't James's fault, and that he has the power to be different." Sarah nodded. "The twins know the same. They've chosen not to have contact, but I've made sure they know that choice is always theirs to revisit." "Do you think he's changed, Ryan?" Sarah considered the question. "I think prison has given him time to reflect. Whether that's led to genuine change or just refined manipulation, I don't know. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. His redemption story, if there is one, doesn't include us." A text buzzed on Sarah's phone. "Marcus, twins are teaching your father how to floss dance. It's exactly as dignified as you'd imagine. Please come save him." Sarah laughed, showing Victoria the message. "10 years ago, could you have imagined this?" Victoria asked. "10 years ago, I thought the perfect life was being Ryan Mitchell's wife, living in that sterile penthouse pretending everything was fine. So no, I couldn't have imagined this. This is so much better than perfect. It's real." As they headed back inside, Sarah paused at the door, looking back at the city that had been the backdrop to her destruction and resurrection. Ryan would be released next month. He'd probably try to rebuild, to reinvent himself, to spin a redemption narrative. The tech world loved a comeback story, but he'd do it without them. The twins had Marcus's last name now. He'd adopted them officially 2 years ago. The foundation would continue growing, helping women escape their own versions of Ryan Mitchell. And Sarah? Sarah would wake up tomorrow in her Brooklyn brownstone, with her daughters arguing over breakfast, her husband making terrible dad jokes, and her father calling to discuss the foundation's expansion into international markets. She'd have lunch with Eleanor Walsh to discuss the new legislation they were pushing, financial abuse as grounds for immediate asset freezing in divorce proceedings. She'd pick up the twins from school, where Emily was student body president and Hannah was leading the debate team to nationals. The fairy tale had been a lie. This truth was so much better. Inside, she found Marcus teaching James Hawthorne the floss dance, while the twins filmed it for what would undoubtedly become viral content. Her father, one of the most powerful men in media, was laughing so hard he could barely stand. "Mom," Emily called out, "Pop says if this gets 1 million views, he'll match it in dollars to the foundation." "Then we better make it good," Sarah said, joining show. As the music started again and 3 generations attempted to coordinate their movements, while Hannah directed and Emily filmed, Sarah caught a glimpse of their reflection in the museum's windows. They looked ridiculous. They looked happy. They looked like a family. This was her empire, not built on lies or manipulation or stepping stones made of other people's dreams. Built on truth, on resilience, on the radical act of women refusing to be diminished. Ryan Mitchell had tried to break her. Instead, he'd forged her into something unbreakable. And that was the ultimate revenge. Not his destruction, but her triumph. Not his suffering, but her joy. Not the end of her story, but the beginning of a legacy that would outlive them all. The video would indeed go viral. James would donate $2 million, insisting the extra million was interest on happiness. The twins would use their minor internet fame to launch a podcast about growing up with complicated family dynamics. Marcus would continue being the father the girls deserved. Victoria would take her company public and pledge 10% of profits to the foundation. And somewhere in federal prison, Ryan Mitchell would see the news coverage of the gala, would see his ex-wife and daughters thriving, would understand finally and completely that he'd traded an empire for an ego. The last word wasn't his to write, it was theirs, and they were just getting started.